All right, welcome in to the second episode here. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show featuring my man, Anthony Schlegal on the Big Play Network. So excited to join us. Listen, we're right here on the cusp of week 0. We've got college football that's actually going to happen. There'll be some quarterback battles. There'll be things that will finally be resolved. But Schlegs, it is an awesome time as we start barreling toward what everybody loves, which is Labor Day weekend. That's the kickoff of college football season. It's the last week, the bye week for the NFL before they get going. And then we are in the full throngs of fall right now.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, Bob, you have kids that play football. They're getting ready to start games. I'm actually now working with my son's, junior high football team, coaching kids on the offensive, defensive line and the fundamentals. And so we all as parents get that kind of fix being on the field with our kids. But then what we do love, Ohio State football, professional football, it's right here. We know it and super excited about it. And even with these Buckeyes, there's a lot of things that are unfolding that we can't wait to see come that first game.
So we got a lot of stuff there. Like you mentioned, Little League starting, high school starting, everything there. So AP rankings are out. We're going to dive into that. So that'll always be fun. And we can talk a little bit. I mean, Schlegs, you're part of some teams that, hey, you start high, you finish high. Sometimes you start a little lower, work your way up. Occasionally times you start high and then finish low, which is not exactly great. Now, when I say high, I'm talking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Buckeye captains are out. So a lot of big news there and how that's going to shape and sculpt the team. So there's some usual suspects we'll see at the top. And I do like one little bit that we'll get into of kind of what they've done with the captains as well. And then always quarterback competition, Schlegs. They want to get that iced up. You want to figure out who your dude is going to be and how you're going to build that the offense around him. So I know that that'll happen this week. And then always we'll have some questions from listeners. So that's going to be really fun. We're going to have a pretty unique and exciting show here as we kind of lead into that. But, before we get too deep into it, man, I mean, how is everything going? How was the last week? I mean, we feeling good and ready to go?
I'm feeling great. I mean, I wouldn't say I got pulled in, but I did get kind of pulled into
tug
with my tug, the tug, the quick ask, and all of a sudden I just get out there and I just start coaching little kids. And I tell you what, parents, I appreciate parents that work with their kids, and now so our practices are really like 7:30 to 9. It's been super hot in Florida, so we're practicing later. Field space is an issue. There's a ton of soccer field. Like everybody's playing soccer. I just want to play some football. You can literally put 50 kids in 20 yards, and that somehow is good enough because soccer takes up 80 yards. Okay, so it blows my mind. But guess what? You just got to adapt and overcome. So that being said, it has been really fun just working with kids on the fundamentals of the game of football. And if it's O-line and D-line, it's stance, it starts, and it's striking. And as kids start to get better and you have full pads, they see that, and the kid might not ever play. It's great, but you know what? He can get in a stance and he can add a lot of value. And then by the time he's an 8th grader, guess what? He will play. And that's the funnest part about it for me. And Bob, I know, you're in the weeds of it with all of your kids. So how's it going up there in UA?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, we're diving into it. We got games here coming up next week. So very, very exciting. But like you said, you want to coach the kids up. You have no idea how kids are going to look. They're going to grow. And a lot of that, people keep asking me, like guys at Ohio State, in the NFL, how do they develop? Like, everybody has their own development track. It takes a little bit more time for some of the guys. So listen, you understand that some people are a little delayed. Work on the technique, work on the fundamentals, and then hopefully one day it will all click, and that'll be great. So I'm excited about that. We've got some great stuff coming up. We're going to take a quick break because coming back, we're going to have our headlines. And we're getting to all the big stories that you want to see. So this is the Bobby Carpenter Show. My man, Anthony Schlegal, each and every week on the Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I have.
So we're going to get into it now. AP rankings are out. The coaches came out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. AP came out this week, and the usual suspects are going to be at the top. And I started looking at this. the old adage to be the man, you got to beat the man. You've got Georgia sitting there at 1. You have Michigan kind of surprisingly sitting there too, because it's the first year I feel like in quite a while where Ohio State hasn't been the highest seeded Big Ten team. And then coming up at number 3 with 1 first place vote, Michigan had 2, and I believe Georgia had 60, are the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Schlegs, when you initially saw this and you looked at it, you thought, hey, Buckeyes sitting here at number 3, well within striking distance, top 4 teams get in. Heck, it could be a situation like last year where 2 Big Ten teams get in. Now, you don't want to rely on that and being the second team in and a non-conference champ. But when you saw this, man, how did this strike you with the Buckeyes coming in at 3rd?
Well, it struck me in the fact that we lost to Michigan for 2 years in a row. So I understand why we're behind them. You have the quarterback battle going on. You have a lot of people being replaced on the offensive line. In Michigan last year, they won the offensive line award for college football. I think it was back-to-back years. So Georgia too is having a new quarterback come in who's actually from the Jacksonville area and Mandarin High School. Side nugget, kid could throw 96-mile-an-hour fastball.
Love Mandarin oranges. They're the best, dude.
Yeah,
they're like an orange, but they're a little smaller. They're a little sweeter. You can peel them off. You can muddle them in a drink. They're just much more versatile than the traditional big orange, which is kind of bulky. The skin's a lot thicker. Mandarin, you can kind of peel those bad boys back. You put them in your pocket, Schlegs. It's like a little snack.
Yeah, little snack. And then you get, so with that, right, so Ohio State being in 3rd, it all comes down to that quarterback position. Then you see Alabama, LSU, USC, Penn State. The Big Ten was well represented. One that caught me from last year, or what we talked about last episode, Bob, was that team potentially that we could bring into the Big Ten, and Florida State being ranked 8th this year, which they got some studs coming back. They did really good in the portal. So that was kind of a surprise how high they've been considering what they've done. But, really North Carolina being all the way down at 21 with what they got was like another kind of shock. And then you got Tulane. And I say these teams just because I know their strength coaches very well. It's just good to see a school like Tulane that came off a 12-2 season still being in the top
USC,
24.
by the way.
They did, man. They did. So, anyways, at the end of the day, Ohio State, I believe they're sitting exactly where they need to be, because who gives a crap about preseason rankings, in my honest opinion? It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And guess what? It's all going to come down to that game when we play that team up north in the big house at the end of the year. So I'm fine with it. It's just now we just got to wrap up who's that quarterback.
So, Schlegs, it's a little bit like that final scene on the carrier in Maverick. You're Tom Cruise just staring out into the ocean. You're where you belong, Mav. And this is it. And so you feel good about Ohio State being in the top 3. The one thing that is surprising, like I said, it's the first time in a while where they haven't been the first Big Ten team.
That's right.
Clemson could say the same thing, because you mentioned Florida State being at 8.
Yep.
Clemson was usually always the first ACC arriver. And so you look at the Big Ten here. You have Michigan at 2, Ohio State at 3, Penn State at 7. And so this looks very similar to the coaches poll with 3 teams in the top 10. And then all of a sudden you start looking at some of the new additions of the Big Ten. You're going to have USC in there who's sitting at 6. You're going to have Washington who's sitting at 10. And you're going to have Oregon who's sitting there at 15. You'll look down a little bit, current Big Ten member Luke Fickell, his Wisconsin Badgers sitting there at 19. By the way, you look at their schedule and how they shake out. They don't have Michigan. They don't have Penn State, and they have Ohio State at home. So it's a pretty solid opportunity for them to get in there. And then in this version, as opposed to the coaches, you've got Iowa here at 25. So you feel pretty good about how the Big Ten has positioned themselves to be able to kind of make a run and to be able to get some things done. So pretty excited about this. That one thing, with Michigan, like you said, they've beat them the last 2 years, man. So what are you supposed to do other than go out there and take care of business?
Yeah, I mean, first, like you said, Georgia, right? You got to be the man, you got to beat the man. Do they have a chance of repeating? Yeah, 100%. But it also comes down to the quarterback position, just like at Ohio State, just like Alabama, right? Everybody's retooling that one, and that's the most important position in all of football. What do you have to do to beat Michigan at Michigan? It literally play like you did versus Georgia, but then finish. Like, that's it, right? This goes down to the defensive calls, and I also believe it's why Ryan Day is now stepping away, giving some autonomy to Brian Hartline. But in that game that you saw versus Georgia with 9 minutes to go, up 11, some of the play calls, like, guess what? If he had his ears on of everything that's going on, the totality of the program. Maybe some of those don't get called, but then you also look at that Michigan game, like stopping the run, like what are we doing? That's really what's going to happen. That's how we're going to beat Michigan this year. It's our defense. And that's also why I feel good about where we are. Like, you don't have to be number 2. You don't have to be number 1. Let's just go out there and do what we do. And then when the time comes to beat them in the big house, let's go freaking play Buckeye-style defense and beat them in the big house. How do you do that? Stop the run. Period. Dot. So I like where we are. I don't give two craps about rankings, but I just want to see the defense show up.
You know what you need to do to stop the run, Schlegs? You need to go back there and get one of those nice little square bench bars. You get the horizontal pegs there so you can really get that punch and get on the inside track and be able to drive somebody down the field on the offensive and defensive line. You know, we talked about Georgia a little bit being number 1.
Yeah.
They're back-to-back national champs. And people talk about, three-peats. I mean, you don't see three-peats in football because injuries are a big piece of it, attrition as you age. And then it's a one-off tournament. So it's really hard to make sure that you're always in a good spot. And you have that added element of weather, which really in other sports doesn't come into play. So there's not been a three-peat since the AP poll has started. The last team to claim 3 straight national championships was a member of the Big Ten, Minnesota, 34, 35, 36. And so when people ask me about Georgia, like, listen, I'm not going to sit here to tell you that Georgia's not good. I'm just telling you that history tells you look at those great Miami teams of the 80s and 90s, the great Nebraska teams back in the day, the great Oklahoma teams, Alabama teams, some of these great Ohio State teams. It's really stinking hard to win 2, let alone a 3rd. And so when you look at this, you have Georgia, you have Michigan, you have Ohio State. And then what's kind of ironic, during Nick Saban's tenure, he has never gone 3 straight seasons, Schlegs, without winning a national title, which that in itself is almost as remarkable as anything. And you have Bama sitting there at 4, and I could even argue that maybe LSU's better than them at this point.
I mean, the thing with LSU is they're really talented, but they've always had those hiccups on the road. They played very well at home, but without like Joe Burrow's year, they ran the table. How hard that is even to do, but they had a guy leading them that was an absolute alpha in Joe Burrow. Like, can they find that, right, with Brian Kelly in staff? And I know that I think the recruiting coordinator was the best. They got voted the best last year, but ultimately it comes down to that position. That has been their Achilles heel every year. They've always have played really good defense, and we all know that they have an unbelievable amount of talent. But can they win those games? And they can only win them if they have a quarterback. To your point with Nick Saban, greatest coach of ever in college football.
Greatest coach of all time.
I mean, the fact that he does that, he's never gone 3 years without winning the ship. That's unheard of. But he also does a phenomenal job of recruiting. And he has his system. And I was thinking about this the other day too. Georgia, Kirby Smart, guess what? Defensive guy. Nick Saban, defensive guy. They won all the national championships. Like, you just start to think about, like, to me, when we were at Ohio State and the defense that we ran, the continuity that we had, we ran the same thing every single year. Iowa's defense is always ranked really high because they always run the same thing all the time, and you saw it with Ohio State as soon as Fick left. And you could also put Ash in there because I think Ash was a phenomenal coordinator.
Did a great
job.
When
Fick left, did a great job. But when Fick left, the identity of the defense then left as well. And really, to be great at this level, you have – because everybody's going to score, but are you going to allow them to not score as much as your offense can put up? And when you're the number 2 offense in the country, top 5, year in and year out offensively, your defense has to step up, man, and give those guys a chance by holding some people down. So that really, honestly, at the end of the day, that's what it is for me, Bob.
And what's interesting about that is you mentioned, we'll get into this as we get into the quarterback competition, because college football now, it's like the NFL. I mean, stopping people is incredibly difficult, just how the rules are shaped, how the tempo of the game, everything works against you as a defensive player. And so Tony Romo told me this 15 years ago. He says, as a quarterback, you don't get judged on first and second down in the first quarter and third quarter. He goes, it's third downs, it's red zone, and it's 2-minute situation. And that's where you separate yourself as a quarterback. And conversely, that's where you separate yourself as a defense, being able to get off the field, being able to take care of those things. And so that's what I know Ryan Day is working with right now. So as we talk about the defense being able to be elite, being able to get those stops, being able to kind of lean on it. And you look at Alabama, they may be kind of zigging when everyone else is zagging. Nick Saban might be leaning in defense a little more, might try to run the football a little more, control the clock in some games, understanding you're not going to be able to win a game, 10-7, but we're still going to maybe try to dictate tempo a little more, protect our young quarterback than maybe they have in the past. And maybe that's something even Ryan Day will do. And so the question that everybody wants to know, they got the quarterback competition.
Yes.
We're going to get into all of that coming up next. We got a quick commercial break. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show. My man, Anthony Schlegal on the Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I had.
So the quarterback position, it's the one, Schlegs, everybody wants to talk about. It's the guys that get the big paychecks. They're the star. They're the GOAT. They're the hero. They're the villain. They get all the senioritas. I mean, it's a great position to be in if things are going well. And listen, you could argue that there is no better position in sports than to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. It's a school of close to 60,000 people. They just had move-in weekend this week, Schlegs. So it's been an absolute zoo. You try to go to the Target down by the Lennox. I mean, you're just in for a whole handful of nonsense. But with that, man, it's a lot of opportunities. And everybody wants that job. And so we got Devin Brown. We've got Kyle McCord. They've been battling it out. Just had their scrimmage on Saturday. And so you don't ever want to lean in too much into one scrimmage. And Ryan, like I said, this is going to be a evaluation of the entirety of camp, even going back to the spring into the summer. So you don't want to say, well, you're winning it or losing it today. But I think they were putting a decent amount of emphasis on that. And I anticipate this week Ryan making a decision. And then also with this, we have the captain's announcements, which we're going to get into in the next segment. But with the captain's announcement, I think there may be something that's a little revealing there, because usually your quarterback's always going to be deemed as one of the leaders. And if there's some uncertainty, guys can kind of sense that. And there's the old adage, you can't fool the room. No. So Ryan's got to make a decision. I believe he would have loved to have made it as soon as possible, but it feels a little bit like he's battling with some inconsistencies right now with what's going on.
Let's talk about it. I mean, these guys, Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, they're competing. Again, competition breeds excellence. You want to have a great competition. I kind of view it like this. And Ryan Day said this quote, I'm going to read it. I do wish that somebody would had really emerged by now. There's really good play out there. There's ability. Now they're just looking for consistency. And with that, there's a couple of things that I look at.
You know what your wife says to you, Schlegs.
Yeah, I just want to be consistent. Yeah. I mean, one, we played in the girthiest of all conferences, the Big Ten, right?
Coast to coast.
The girthy 10. But I mean, you want to be consistent, right? You want to be able to have longevity. And so with that,
grower versus shower, where do we come down on that?
I would say that goes into consistent. Am I consistently showing and consistently growing at a really nice medium pace, Bob? Okay. So that being said, in this, I can see why it's difficult. You have an unbelievable amount of talent on the field. Okay, think about this. I got two quarterbacks that are battling for position, and I got absolute freaks at the wide receiver position and the running back position. Like, they're automatically going to make you look good. Like, Ryan has to sift through this, and he's looking about decision-making. Who's going to be able to take care of the football? Who, when we have to go make a play, is able to get out of the pocket or step up into the pocket and have his vision downfield to get the ball to my playmakers, because it's different. They don't have to do all things to be able to allow this team to go. They have to be able to do what they're called upon to do. One, take care of the football, and two, make really good decisions. You couple this with finding the identity in the nucleus of a offensive line. So there might be times where you're with the ones, but they're rotating people with the ones. And that guy might give up a sack, whereas another guy that would have been in there would not have given up the sack, because you're trying to find that identity. That also goes against how a quarterback can respond in those situations. So they're really dealing with three things. You got the quarterback position itself. You have an unbelievable amount of talented, peripheral players, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers that can help them. And then 3, that offensive line play and how can they handle the pocket? Because if they do a great job doing it and the guy can go through his progressions, no problem. But how do they handle that adversity against a really talented defensive line? There's a lot of things that you have to wrap your head around, Bob.
And I think one of the other things you mentioned, the defensive line, and they can kind of mitigate that and sub some guys in and out. But this has been the first time here in a number of years where I looked across the back 7 as well. And I'm thinking, man, there's some dudes here that are really good.
Yes.
They've got 3 really talented corners in Igbenuson, Hancock, and Burke. I love what they're doing with the secondary. They've got and the good thing is too, they've got a bunch of different body styles. Like you're playing essentially Cam Martinez and Sonny Styles kind of at the same position. Those 2 dudes couldn't look more different physically from what they're giving you. And so you get a lot of different looks. And so it hasn't just been Schlegs, like stand up and pitch the ball out there, have success, 2-minute drill, boom, 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 boom. We're good. Like the defense is mixing it up, and they've done a great job. They've played really well. So this has challenged quarterbacks in a way that I don't know that maybe they've been challenged in the past. And so I'm hoping some of these inconsistencies you're talking about showers versus growers. I mean, you want guys going out there and playing, but you also want to be able to have that growth element to where, hey, you can really firm up when you need to and continue to be able to provide that growth track as you move through the season, and doing so at a medium pace.
Yeah.
And so with all of those things, like this has been it's been a good situation, I think. However, I think Ryan would prefer at this point, like I need more of the good and less of the bad. I don't need great. Like I don't need any of you guys to go out there and beat Tom Brady. I just need to make sure that the bad plays we're able to mitigate. Yes. Because as long as you're ahead of the sticks, like you're going to give yourself a chance. 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 isn't bad with this wide receiver group. You'll be okay. But let's not throw interceptions. Let's not take bad sacks, and let's not put ourselves in 3rd and 13, 3rd and 14.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Bob. And you know what though? That's a great litmus test for a quarterback to be able to judge how can they grow from one practice to the other. Have I seen the growth? Does the consistency happen? And can the guy make plays when called upon and he has to respond? That's what they're going to be looking for. The good thing is that they're very talented. So, and I trust Ryan Day and I trust, Brian Hartline and the staff to make the appropriate decision. And guess what? Buckeye Nation, ride with that guy, back that guy, support that guy. Because you can't just give him a short leash and then we're going to pull him. Like you got to give him a little bit of autonomy and watch, like you said, the growth happen, Bob.
Well, that's part of it. You mentioned the short leash. Like Fields struggled a ton when he first became a starter. First 3 games last year, they're talking about benching CJ. Everybody wanted someone else in there. Like, this isn't the answer. There's going to be a process of kind of working this out. Like it always happens. And everybody always remembers, Justin at the end of his career or CJ at the end of his career. You forget, the spring games where they don't look good. You forget early in the non-conference when these guys don't look great. So there will be a growth process. You have to pick your starter. You have to roll with them. And you have to make sure that you give them enough leeway to where they can make a mistake and they don't come over and feel like they're going to be taken out. They're not looking over their shoulder thinking, what's going on? And so that's that balance. However, in the same vein, man, if you feel like you didn't pick the right guy, then you ultimately also have to be able to look at that and make a decision. So this is what Ryan, I think, is trying to balance here. It's like, hey, let's get some continuity. Let's get it figured out. Also, on the other side of that, let's make sure that we have enough space so that we get the right guy. And so that I don't realize a week or 2 in, you know what, I should have went with someone else. And that right there, Schlegs, I think is the hardest thing for any coach to try to master.
It is. It's the eye of the coach. You can't ever discredit.
I heard this saying that beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I think sometimes it might be in the eye of the beer holder, depending on where you're at and what you're doing. So maybe some of these guys, and I think they're pressing a little bit. Like if I could just grab like Kyle McCord and be like, hey, dude, come on out. We'll get us a case of garage beers. We're going to slam them down. All right. We're going to sit there. We'll figure this stuff out. You'll wake up really hungover, go practice, and then you won't be worrying about anything except for how bad your headache is, and you'll be good. And I think when you do that stuff, you get out of your own head. You get past it all, and you move in the right direction. All right. Well,
get out of your own way, play fast.
Play fast, play smart. Hey, clear mind, clear heart, can't fail. All right, you'll be ready to go. We're going to take another quick break. We got the captains coming up. It's going to be good. We got some questions from listeners coming up too as well. So that's going to be exciting. Bobby Carpenter Show, my man Anthony Schlegal on the Big Play Network.
We gonna be happily ever after. That's what I had.
Got some more headlines here. The captains finally come down. And in the past with Urban, Schlegs, we had this plethora of captains where it started as like 4, 5, 6. I mean, there was like 8 or 9 captains some years. Back when we played, it was anywhere from 2 to 4. Maybe in a given year, you'd have a 5th guy. And I feel good because they're getting back to that now. You got Tommy Eichenberg, Cade Stover, Xavier Johnson, all named captains.
Yes.
Linebacker, tight end, wide receiver. When you hear that, you see those guys in positions, what kind of hits you?
Unsung heroes. I mean, Tommy Eichenberg, I mean, he's up for every award defensively. You and I both know, like, Tommy's very soft-spoken. I'm sure he's quite comical behind closed doors, but he's the leader of that.
Not
defense.
A big talker.
Not a big talker at all. No, let's not kid ourselves. Nor was it really AJ, but his sarcastic humor just comes out like that. It's kind of how I envision, Tommy. And then you got Cade. Cade's just like, I'm just a dude, right? Like, you want to play linebacker, you want to play end, you want to play tight end. Like, I'll do whatever. As a matter of fact, his NIL deals, he wants tractors and guns. I'm like, that's my guy, right? And then you got Xavier, who wide receiver,
Professor
is wearing
X, we'll call him that.
Wearing the block O.
Yeah.
He does everything, Bob. Like, I want you to get into all these guys because you know them better than I do. But the Xavier Johnson one, it's a great for everybody that has kids that love Ohio State football, that want to be able to share with their kids. Like, he's not in Mecca. He's not like one of the guys that you would think about. He's not a Jackson. He's not any of these guys that Marvin Harrison Jr. It's Xavier Johnson. When called upon, Xavier will do whatever you want. You'll put him in the backfield. He'll be a slot. He'll return kicks, whatever the case may be. And he's your third captain. And so it's not about the position that you have on the field, whether you're a starter or not. It's about how you add value to the team. Right. And again, he is a leader. And guess what? Marvin Harrison Jr. is a leader. He doesn't need to have a captain on his jersey to say he's a leader. But I'm super excited that we're back down to 3 because I hate having all these different voices, Bob, in there that people think that they got to speak. If Tommy Eichenberg speaks, everybody in that building will just be like, what? They will listen. It will last 5 seconds, but it will be very meaningful.
And you see these 3 guys, and I think what it goes to is because your captain should be a reflection of your team.
Yes.
And when you boil it down, I mean, they should be a reduction of what your team represents. You have Tommy Eichenberg, Cade Stover, Xavier Johnson. All these guys came back to play another year. They've all been selfless. You look at Cade, you mentioned his exploits of playing a bunch of different positions, both sides of the ball. Xavier, walk on, battling for a starting spot. And at the end of the year, I mean, he's playing slot. He's playing running back in the Peach Bowl. They're moving around, doing everything. By the way, he kind of caught the touchdown pass that broke the game open against Notre Dame, after Jackson went down. So, I mean, all these guys are selfless. And I think that that's the important thing to focus on is, why they all make good captains. Because I'm watching Xavier Johnson walk around the facility and pick up guys like sweat towels and stuff in the workout room. I mean, Kyle McCord's doing the same thing. Marvin will do it. All these guys, they're all tireless workers. And you see that. And so you don't need a C on your chest, to be a leader. That's a misnomer. I remember, Vrabe saying that. And, you can only have so many captains. You get it. And you want to have a whole team of leaders because everybody's going to lead in their own way. Tommy's not a vocal guy. Cade, a little more vocal when he needs to be. Xavier can be as well. But these guys are the essence of what the team ultimately is. And that, to me, is probably the most exciting thing. And so with that, we're going to take a trip down memory lane. We got some captain stories. We'll talk about guys that we had that were captains. It's the fewest since 2009, what that means, what it represents, what it means to be a captain in Ohio State, and why these guys will be good. And some of the guys that we had, we talked about AJ, Mike Doss, whoever it was, Mike Nugent, these guys being good captains, what that all means and how it can ultimately impact your team. So we'll get all that coming up. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show. My man, Anthony Schlegal, as always on the Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I had.
And so as we've been talking captains, what's one of the things that's most interesting is everybody looks at captains, these vocal guys. And I think it's always good, Schlegs, to have a mix. And, being a leader, you don't necessarily need to be a captain for that, obviously, to happen. But you represent, you vote for your guys. And the way that I like to do it the best, and I think this is the way Ryan does it, is, it's a player-driven thing because those guys are a representation of your team. And so I personally, Schlegs, like the way in which, hey, whether every player gets one vote, every player gets 3 votes, you want to have them each vote for an offensive guy, defensive guy, whatever it is. But as long as it's player-driven, I'm a huge fan of it. I've never really liked when coaches appoint captains or they'll give a list of players you can vote from because it feels inauthentic at that point.
Yeah, and it is. And I'll give you a little snapshot from the Urban era, like when we won the 2014 national championship. We have in the weight room, there's scarlet, there's gray, and there's maize, or the blue, right? And the goal was, how do we get as many of our team, right? 10-80-10 rule. How do we get as many of our team into the top 10 to where it's now 30%, right? And of those guys, but it's all year. It's the beginning of off-season program all the way through the summer. People see that. Then they see the culmination of all of that work into camp. They still doing it because that requires a tremendous amount of discipline and a great attitude, great effort, right? Accountability to be able to do that consistently. And then they vote upon those guys that want to represent them. And I think this is a great indicator as to what this team is, Bob. And I'll just say too, for you, when you talked about vocal, Bob, you're vocal. You and I are both vocal. I think we knew when to say something. But yeah, Nate Sally, you had AJ Hawk, you had Nick Mangle and Rob Sims. You had 2 offensive linemen, Nasty Nate and AJ. And both those guys are super quiet, but guess what? They're ultra competitive. And that really resonated with me because when we went up against each other, you saw it every single day watching film, like they were there. And you can't fool the players, and regardless of level. Even if you're a Pop Warner kid and you throw a kid out there and he's playing and everybody on the team knows that he's not as good as everybody else and he's just playing because the kids know. You can't lie to the kids. You can't lie to the room, as you said earlier, Bob.
Can't fool it. And, people ask, what does the captains actually do? What's their significance? And number one, to me, anytime you're a leader or a captain, your number one job is to do the best version of yourself at all times. You need to be above reproach. And that stinks. That means that you're the guy that's always on time. You should never be late. You're early. You're doing the things that nobody else wants to do. You're not griping. You're not complaining. You're making sure that, hey, I'm doing what I need to do plus anything else. And then nobody's ever going to look at the film and be like, gosh, this is one of our captains. This dude's taking a play off, or, look at him here. It's not really great. There's more effort to be had. And that's why I see these 3 guys and they're max effort dudes and they're in really, really good spots and they've worked their butt off to get there. So it feels really good when you see those guys and their ability to have success. So that's a good thing. And then ultimately it comes down to it's easy to be a captain when things are going well, man. And I joke all the time. One of my good friends he's a pilot. I'm no one gets paid to fly planes when it's, sunny out and it's easy. Anybody can do that. You get paid to pilot the plane, pilot a ship in a storm when things are bad, when stuff isn't going right, when you got to take a good hard look in the mirror and try to figure out, am I doing everything I can and in the right way? And is our team as well? And so that's what these guys are going through. You're not getting to be a captain against Western Kentucky and Youngstown State. That's not what it's about. You're a captain because in the 3rd quarter against Michigan, after maybe they've scored and you've just given up 2 first downs in a row, how do we tie it off? How do we stop the bleeding and turn this thing around? And who's going to be that person who ultimately draws a line in the sand to get it done. And it's really tough. It's not easy. You have to sacrifice immensely. Like I said, you can go out and you can be one of the guys, and you need to make sure you're connecting with everybody and be a voice for all of them. But man, Schlegs, to me, the biggest version of it always is like in bad times, what do you ultimately do?
Yep. And you know what, though, Bob? They will be tested. And I like that it's 3. I like that you honestly, let's think about it. You have Tommy, you have Cade, right? Then you have Xavier kind of in the middle, wide receiver skill guy, right? Like those 2 guys,
Yep.
tight end, linebacker, they're the big skill, right? But they're also probably the toughest dudes. Like if you're like, hey, who do I want to back alley on our team? I want those 2 and Xavier. Like, I mean, like that's how you look at it. And I think, Bob, as you go through this camp and with the uncertainty as the quarterback position, those 3 guys also have the soft skills and the relationships because people on the team like them to say, we are supporting this. And if there's ever any back channel bullshit that happens in the locker room, I guarantee you the respect from everybody else in the room, these 3 dudes will shut that down because that's also what you're going through in times like this when you're bringing in somebody that's new and young at that position.
Absolutely. Coming back, show's almost over. We got some questions coming in, which we love. We'll answer all your stuff. Then we'll wrap the show up. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show featuring my man Anthony Schlegal here, coming to you live on the Big Play Network.
We're gonna be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right. The questions now coming at you live. We throw them out there every week on X, formerly known as Twitter. First question here coming from Talking Bucks 97. It's like teammate from our era that didn't get enough recognition. Someone that we could maybe throw out there that, you know what, maybe a bigger player and a bigger contributor than maybe people realize to the success of the team.
Oh, geez. That's tough, man. I mean,
Right. CTE.
we had a lot of great guys. You know, I mean, you know what? I mean, talking defensively, we mentioned Nate, but Quinn Pitcock, phenomenal player, man. I mean, he was fantastic. Hoods on the defensive end, like Jay Richardson played a long time in the league. I think our defensive line that year in 05 probably had a lot of unsung heroes on it, Bob. What about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think you look at it. You mentioned Quinn Pitcock. You had Dave Patterson. I look at a guy.
Dave.
Yeah, exactly. I look at a guy, though, who didn't really play much, and probably most fans would have no idea who this dude is. But a guy named Trevor Robinson, who was a walk-on linebacker with us.
Yes.
And all Trevor did was run down on kickoff. And everybody says, like, this is their dream. If I could just run down on kickoff, I'd sell out for the Buckeyes. And it's great. But the problem is that very few people are really going to be able to go do that. And Trev would run down. I mean, he bust face masks in, and like that's all he did.
Yes.
And I always told people, like, he paid to do that. He wasn't getting paid. I mean, it was really something pretty special that he would do. And I love the guy. He was on kickoff return, and like that was his lot in life. And I have infinite respect from this day. And you know what? Dude's got a great job. Comes back in. I love seeing Trev. He had the deepest voice in the world, Schlegs. He did a great Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Billy, you do the chopper. Way better than yours, Schlegs. Yours was terrible.
For sure.
So one other quick question we got coming here from Bodega Buckeye. What specifically do you need to see from the defense in game one to make you a believer that it can reach championship potential?
All right. Indiana, week 1, right, Bob?
Yeah.
I want to see red zone defense because they absolutely suck last year. They're 126 in the country. And that goes back to what we talked about. I mean, bend, don't break. Like, all right, somebody misses the tackle, they get inside the red zone, we hold them to a field goal. Like, that's the standard. Stop letting them score all the time. I think they had 9 field goals and gave up 27 touchdowns. That has to be inverted. Okay? Like that, to me, I want to see that. I want to see great red zone defense. I have a high expectation for this defense this year, being in the second year for Knowles, but also having a very veteran core personnel. I expect to see that. And then ultimately rushing defense in the big games, because that's toughness and discipline. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, do we eliminate big plays and do we play great in the red zone? Bob.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this, the 2-minute red zone, third down. Those are all the things that you ultimately want to see them have success in. The red zone defense was not good last year. I think you want to see the elimination of big plays. And they really didn't give up a ton through last season. It was mostly just the final 2 games. And so I don't know if there's anything, Schlegs, that in the first 2 games in the first game, you'll be able to look at it and say, yeah, they've got it all fixed, because I don't think Indiana's on that talent level. I don't think they have the horses to where you're going to look at it and say, hey, these guys can come out here and they can do some damage. I think you'll probably see that a little bit more against Notre Dame, the 4th game of the season. They got Sam Hartman. He's a guy that can push the ball down the field. If you give him time, he's going to be able to pick you apart a little bit. And I think people want to see that secondary, what they're going to be able to hold up. Will they be able to make sure that they don't give up the big plays as well? And then lastly, we'll get through here from Jay Wilride. JW, yeah, we got Jay Wilride asking this quick question here. We got about 30 seconds to a minute, Schlegs. Any reports the progress on the O-line since the spring game? Now, keep in mind, they moved Josh Fryer to right tackle. He's now locking that down. Yep. And so they feel, I think, pretty good there. But any news outside of that? How do you feel?
I don't really know the new. I mean, I'm not there on a daily basis, I can say, but I mean, I think Josh Simmons going to left tackle. They want to put guys where they feel comfortable, but they're also looking at this for the long play, because what is Fry? He's a redshirt junior, right? So he's a guy that can potentially come back. Simons, he's a guy that's a sophomore. You got a center that's a redshirt freshman, right? So it's more of that long game. Donovan Jackson's been a dude out there, kind of like the vocal leader of the offensive line.
Huge arms.
I think they got to. Boom. Really, monster arms.
Oh, dude. So big guns.
Anyways, I feel good about it, and I like moving him back, because you want guys to be able to be at their very best in the tackle position, both sides, very critical. But if you have a more athletic guy that maybe is a little bit younger that can go into that left tackle and then grow and progress throughout the year, that might be the smart move. So I'm excited to see how it plays out, Bob.
Yeah, I think Simmons over there on the left will be good. He's a really good athlete, has to get used to practicing and playing against Ohio State level competition. The D-line has been perfect working with him to kind of help get him there. And I think that they eventually will. They've got a good young stable of players. Could be the deepest O-line they've had in a while. They just got to develop a little bit. Good. Final break coming up. We'll give our final thoughts before we get out of here. Bobby Carpenter Show, Anthony Schlegal, Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I have.
All right, Schlegs, just a little bit left here. Not much time. Your thoughts here on what you think needs to get done, what they need to change, anything going on, or maybe even just the preparation side of things as they move now from kind of this camp mode, as Saturday was kind of the last day of camp. They're starting school, the challenges with that, skirt season running around. I mean, there's a lot of things that the Buckeyes are going to have to tackle here between now and the next couple of weeks.
I just think it's fun, and then balancing that routine. That's what, because you've had them in the building. You've been able to dictate everything that they've done since they reported to camp. And now you're going back and you're taking classes. And let's face it, yes, it's NIL. Yes, there's a lot of TV money, but yes, they're also still students and they're dealing with that. So being able to be disciplined, being able to support them and all those things, the food, the hydration, all the training, that really is what has to step up to another level, because the guys really have to be disciplined as they take on homework, as they go to their classes. I don't care if it's online or in person. It doesn't matter. You still got to go do the work, and then you still got to go to do the work in the Woody. So balancing that, right, over the next couple of weeks before you go into week 1 of the season will be critical for them.
they're going to have to figure out, a lot of things. Now it comes into life juggling. Obviously, you're football first, school first, football second is what our coach used to always tell us. We were there. Go to school, take care of your business. Make sure you keep the main thing the main thing. Get your degree, study hard, make sure you do everything. School first, football second. And so with that, these guys have a lot of things obviously on their plate. They've got lifting now. They've got rehab, and what Ryan, I think, is going to do after talking to him last week, Schlegs, he's going to make this like a mock game week where, hey, big scrimmage on Saturday, Sunday, film it up, kind of Monday, more of an office day. And then, hey, they come in Tuesday, kind of first and second down run, Wednesday, clean some stuff up, a little third down, Thursday, special situations, red zone, clean up third down, Saturday, kind of walk through, and then do maybe like a little more of a young guy mock scrimmage on Saturday before you ultimately dive into game week. So I like where their head's at. I love the fact that you kind of rep through it because the routine of football is what makes it beautiful. And so they're getting that going this week. 30 seconds. Any final thoughts you want to get out there in the ether before we close this guy up?
Nope. I'll tell you this, man. We got Notre Dame. We got Navy going over to Dublin, Ireland and playing. And football's here, guys. I mean, it's ready. And I'm super excited about this Ohio State team. And I can't wait to watch all the pieces of the puzzle come together versus Indiana.
It's going to be great. And the one new thing is, like you mentioned, Notre Dame Navy, week 0 this Saturday, going to be in Dublin, Ireland. So listen, you want to get a little preliminary scouting going on? You'll have the opportunity to do that with the Fighting Irish. Check them out. Watch them. Buckeyes aren't going to be in action. We'll have to wait till Labor Day weekend with them in the Indiana Hoosiers. Well, that's it for this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show, featuring my man, Anthony Schlegal. It's on the Big Play Network. Keep locking in, like, subscribe. We love you guys.